In this video, I'm going to continue talking about torture magic. I'm going to be talking about supernatural bodies, supernatural body parts, supernatural people. I'm going to bring it to Christ as well, in the biblical storyline. Alright? So, I have to bring this up because in this video, I talked about torture magic. Like, they would torture people for energy, right? So in witchcraft, they do this to this day. They torture people because they believe there's extra magic in it. That's why they torture kids. That's why they torture people. Because the blood gets pumped with all this adrenaline, the mescaline, and they use it they believe there's more magic in it. That's why they torture victims, okay? And they'll consume the flesh sometimes. Yeah, they'll use them, okay? And it's torture magic, and it's in the movies I have to bring up. They're cannibals. They're nasty. They consume nasty feces, urine. There's some weird. They consume body parts and stuff because they believe there's power in it. And and they back then they thought that people had supernatural. Even if they thought you had supernatural abilities after you died, they thought it was still attached to your body, and God uses that. Okay, and it's very interesting because that torture magic or getting energy from the tortured dead body even it reminds me of, like, I don't watch current movies, but they totally did that with the Matrix movie. If you saw the new Matrix movie, the newer one that came out a while ago, because according to the lore anyway, Neo and Trinity died, right? They died, but then the machines, like, they regenerate them and they bring them back, but they don't bring them back to life all the way. They are in some sort of weird sleep state and they're just torturing them, and that's how they get the energy. Yeah, it's the same thing. It's like the predictive programming in it is very real, and I have to bring that up. And that's possibly, and they did that with Minority Report too. Okay, Minority Report, it's about taking energy from bodies or supernatural people, and then and it brings life to the whole kingdom, right? All right, and they do that with Minority Report. There's like these 3 supernatural people, all right, and they're torturing them. They're like, it's against their will though, right? They're like being tortured. They're in some sort of sleep state, and the kingdom they use them. They abuse them, basically, right? All right, yeah. And it also even reminds me of Monsters, Inc. a little bit, where they have to go in there, and when the kids are asleep, they have to torture and scare them where they're sleeping, and that's how they get their power and energy. And that's what energizes the whole kingdom. It's like the goofy version, but it's still the same thing, right? Like, they're like torturing them, and that's how they get their energy. Yeah, they get their energy from the kids. And my point is that there's a thing that goes back to the beginning of time, and they do that in the Bible, obviously, okay? And God even uses the behavior of animals to explain Satan, but not just Satan, it's Satanists and evil people too, right? So oftentimes Satan is depicted as a snake or a lion, because in real life, snakes and lions actually do torture their prey before they eat and kill them. Alright, they torture them on purpose. Okay, and Satanists and Satan do the same thing. And I wanted to give you some Bible passages about this. Okay, so thus saith the Lord, as the shepherd taketh out of the mouth of the lion 2 legs or a piece of an ear, so shall the children of Israel be taken out that dwell in Samaria. So this is about taking body parts out of Satan's mouth, because in real life they really do this. And they were doing this stuff back then. That's why they wanted their bodies, okay? And we're going to bring up another one right here. Who also eat the flesh of my people and flay their skin from off them, and they break their bones and chop them in pieces as for the pot as flesh within the cauldron. Okay, this is like witchcraft to this day, and they were doing that back then. Okay, they would reuse these people's bodies. And what I wanted to bring up too is, and I'm going to bring up the pregnant thing in just a minute, okay? But we're going to talk about this Bible story right here when the Israelites were groaning and crying. So the Pharaoh died, okay? And it talks about how the Israelites were groaning and crying. Keep in mind they were in captivity. They were being tortured. Okay, and people always assume they were just building something. It's possible they were building something. They were building not the pyramids necessarily, but something, right? They were building shelters and stuff like that. But they're being held captive and tortured the same way Neo and Trinity were being captured. Get it? The Trinity thing is still there. They were torturing them on purpose, probably for the same satanic rituals, okay? Even so, when the Pharaoh died, the theory is that sometimes they would say the Pharaoh, when they said the Pharaoh was died or he was dying, they would sacrifice some of the children, and they would give the children to the Nile. That's exactly what happened in the Bible, right? They sacrificed the children to the Nile, or they believe that they were actually put blood on the Pharaoh to heal him, or even to bring him back to life. That's the theory of what's going on here in this Bible passage, okay? So people using bodies for supernatural purposes, even supernatural people, kids, draining them and using them for their own power is a theme in the ancient world, in the Bible, and in the movies, okay? So it's possible you can use that perspective with the pyramids. These pyramids are supposed to be tombs, right? There was a body per whole pyramid. That's pretty crazy that they built that for one body. Alright, and there's a couple of different perspectives you can take here. But one could be that there was someone or something buried inside in the pyramids, okay? And they were directing energy from the body, okay? And believe it or not, some of that energy is still attached to the pyramid because that body was in there. That's a possible explanation for the pyramids, okay? Alright, so as we as Christians, we kind of have the same theology, okay, but we're not supposed to go and torture and kill people, okay? We believe that Jesus runs the body of Christ. His sacrifice, his tortured body, powers heaven. God uses the symbolism of it, okay? Alright, and Satan tries to steal it, though. He'll reuse the same kind of energy and do it for evil magic, okay? And I'm going to talk about the pregnancy part of it. So I've been talking about supernatural body parts, like Samson had magic hair, perhaps Moses had a magic hand. It depends on how you look at it. And I wanted to talk about Mary. Okay, there's supernatural body parts, maybe like something was going on with an actual body part. And believe it or not, human beings still have a body part that does regeneration. Our lungs are pretty good. Our lungs can regenerate almost all the way once they're injured. And also the liver. The liver can literally regenerate and regrow itself. So it's possible that some other people had body parts that were like this. Okay? And I want to talk about Mary and her womb. I want to talk about perhaps God was doing something weird with Mary's womb. Okay? Because theoretically, if Jesus was in there, and he was supernatural, it's possible that either after Jesus was born, some of that energy was still attached to Mary because he was in there for so long, right? Just like the pyramids. It's possible, and this is getting really fringy, okay? It's possible that Mary still had some of that weirdness attached to her, all right? Because it rubs off on other people, right? It's contagious almost, right? And so it's possible that Mary lived longer. It's possible that she couldn't die as easily. And believe it or not, that's the reason why when Jesus was being crucified, the Bible will tell you that when Jesus was about to be crucified, she had to take off. Okay? She had to leave and hide. They had to hide her. Okay, because they wanted Jesus' body, and then the next best thing is they wanted the magic baby maker. Okay, they wanted the womb where he came from. Okay, you understand what I'm saying? You understand their way of thinking? Possibly? You understand what I'm saying? And it talks about how, thus said the Lord, for three generations of the children of Ammon, and for 4 I will not turn away the punishment thereof, because they have ripped up the women with child. Okay, so they're sacrificing even pregnant women, right? That you can link that to Mary, of course. Okay, even if you didn't have supernatural powers, they would still do that because they thought there was power in it. Okay, and something very similar happened to Sarah. God gave her some sort of womb, dead womb. She had some sort of dead womb, but it was healed and she gave birth, right? All right, she gave birth to the nations of Israel. And so, yeah, it's probably for the same reasons why they had to hide her bones, okay? Because people wanted it. If they heard that was true, they believed it, they wanted it, all right? And we're going to read this Bible passage about how Mary had to be taken and hidden away for these very reasons, okay? This is when Jesus was at the crucifixion. Mary was there. When Jesus therefore saw his mother and the disciple standing by, whom he loved, he said unto his mother, Woman, behold thy son. Then said he to the disciple, Behold thy mother. And from that hour, the disciple took her into his home. So she was rushed away and taken away in that hour. Like, they had to get rid of her or hide her, just like they had to hide Sarah, right? Because as soon as they find out he's going to rise from the dead, it's going to start getting real here, okay? She had to take off, okay? They're going to start hunting her next. Do you understand what I'm saying? And you can get really freaky with it, because I don't know, because there are Bible passages where it says that people live forever. Some of God's people will never die. Maybe Mary's one of them, and they just have to wait till he comes back. Like when Jesus comes back to the end of the world. That's a really weird way of thinking about it, because there are several Bible passages that talk about how some people will never taste death, the first death. Okay, they won't die. Maybe Mary was one of them. She probably maybe lived for a long time or something. Maybe God just has her. Okay, alright. But the thing is, it's kind of creepy because it's possible that somebody did get her, or maybe just her womb. It's hard to say. And, didn't Mary have other children too? Is there something going on there with them? And then you can get all weird with the Antichrist. Maybe that's how Jesus comes back. He actually is born again, like a person again. Like they actually use the same womb and the same woman. Okay, but you can get even really weird with it too, because maybe that's where the Antichrist comes from. It's like Jesus, but like a evil twin version or something. You know what I mean? The Antichrist could come out of the same womb, because that's what the devil does. He takes body parts and uses it for his own crooked ways, right? He uses the same power. He just imitates God, right? Weird, right? Yeah, you maybe use that perspective. Also, I want to bring up, it's also possible they needed to take her away, because as soon as he dies and rises from the dead, she has claim on Jesus' body as well. And they're going to try to kill her to get rid of that. Okay, so no one can stake claim on his body, right? Because she could do it legally, right? Yeah, and I want to know a couple things. I want to know about, how Jesus rose Lazarus from the dead. I want to know if, he stayed alive longer, or maybe even forever until he comes back. I want to know if he really rose him from the dead. Was he just normal when he rose him from the dead, or did he live a long time? Or maybe he's still alive. That's some freaky stuff to think about, but it's possible. And it's possible somewhere out there someone has Mary's womb. That's a very nasty way of looking at it. I hope not. I hope that's not what's happening, but that's possible explanation that somewhere out there, I don't know, some people have Mary's womb and it's still intact because Jesus was in there, and because that power went on to her. Or maybe she's alive and someone has her. And I also want to bring up, because if you have to start thinking how they think, okay? And it's also possible that's what happened to Joseph, okay? That's what happened to Joseph, because maybe they thought he was Jesus' real dad, even though he wasn't. Okay, and somebody may have gotten him or killed him or something. All right, yeah, that's why all the apostles had to flee immediately. They had to take off. Okay, because people are very, very superstitious back then. You just being around him that long, they probably got. And I don't know if it's real or not. I don't know if the apostles, because it's proximity, right? People who are in proximity of Jesus, did something else happen to them because they were so close to him for so long? Because he has that energy, he has that healing energy, right? Yeah. And I also wanted to point out, how this angel had to defend Moses' body. That's exactly why there were angels in the tomb. Okay, but God uses a human component. Okay, just like one of the apostles took Mary, he was in charge of protecting her. Okay, but he was just a person, right? It's possible that people were actually there protecting Jesus' body, not just supernatural angels. Like, for example, Mary Magdalene was there at Jesus' tomb all the time, probably because she knew about all that stuff. Okay? So she was making sure no one was going to mess with his body. Sometimes these angels that protect bodies are people, not just supernatural beings. Even though supernatural being one exists. And I believe that's what the Watchers are. Okay, the night watchmen. God uses the watchmen to explain a bunch of things. But if you use the practical term for a watchman, like back in the day, the watchmen were people who watched over bodies. That's what they did, so people wouldn't mess with the bodies. It was a real term that people think, it's a real thing that people did back then. They would make sure no one would mess with your bodies. So you can call Mary Magdalene and the apostle a watchman, because that's what they do. They watch over and protect supernatural people and bodies. You get what I'm saying? They watch over them. Okay, but there's always a bad version of that too. Like, for example, you can call the Egyptian high priest watchman, because I don't know who or what was in those pyramids, but they are watching those bodies. Okay? And I don't know if they were super evil or what, but they were making sure no one was touching them. There's like an evil version and a good version. There's evil watchmen and there's good watchmen. Watchmen are people who watch over people and bodies and graves. That's why there's even to this day, that's why there's angels over graves. Okay? Theoretically, I know this is just a stupid statue. Theoretically, that angel is supposed to be watching over your grave. That's a watchman. That's the supernatural version of a watchman. Okay? That's why to this day there's angels over graves. And everyone did that. That kind of thinking goes back to the beginning of time. That's why there's a sphinx protecting the 3 tombs. It's a supernatural being that protects the graves. That's what the Sphinx is for. I believe, anyway. And, and to roll back all that supernatural stuff, it's just about protecting people who are most vulnerable. Okay? Like children, or children in the womb. It's very possible that's what the 3 wise men were. You can read a whole bunch of information about the 3 wise men that people are missing, and I'll talk about it more. Okay? It's possible that God sent men to protect the family, or supernatural beings to protect the family, okay? Because oftentimes in the Bible, angels are just called men. The supernatural angels are just called men, okay? And a good example of what you can, am I telling you to go guard graves? Not necessarily. I mean, there are some places in third world countries where there's grave robbing being real. I'm sure you can call the police if you see someone digging a grave. But hypothetically, it would be more useful as protecting children, stopping abortion. This is more practical means instead of using all that supernatural stuff. Okay, yeah, because people kill babies all the time for their own good. Okay, you can protect that. You just pass laws. Yeah, you can do. There's always like a more natural component. Okay, it's about protecting the vulnerable. That's what being a watchman is. All right, and there's obviously you can do that now without having magical powers. You can stop abortion. You can stop prenatal weird testing, weird vaccines being made from abortal fetal lines, that stuff, okay? You can say no to that and try to stop it. That's how you can be a watchman in real life, alright? Anyway, so please think about this stuff, guys, and thank you.